let's talk about horse fitness and their fitness programs. So you guys have been requesting this video for ages, and I am keen to crack on with it, especially with the event season being pretty much started. Now, as you know, my favourite sport is eventing, but just be aware that this can be tailored to whatever you want to do with your horse, whether you want to hack them, whether you want to hunt them, or event, or show jump, or dressage, or I don't know, race. I do feel like if you're a race trainer and you're watching my video on how to get fit, there might be a better person to chat to, but these factors are still important factors and it is still relevant. So if you do want to watch me first and then go and speak to someone a bit more qualified about specifically racing, that's great too. While we're on the topic of fitness, I want to say a huge thank you to Yesoul for sponsoring today's video. Not only is horse fitness important to our sport, but rider fitness is also integral too. Studies have shown that just riding extra horses is not enough for us to be fit enough to compete. Not compete well, at least. So riders need to do a little bit extra. The main issue I personally face is I don't have time to go and do lots of stuff on my own fitness when I'm focusing on 3 horses fitness programs, working and keeping my horses alive and mucking them out. So this is where Yesoul has been absolutely amazing, because as you can see, I am in my spare stable here. So it is on the doorstep, and with the screencasting feature and the membership, it feels like you are within a class while you are on it. They really push me on. There's also the option to be able just to watch your favorite programs while you're cycling, or you can use the world view mode to feel like you are cycling around some of the most beautiful places around. So if you would like to work on your rider fitness with a Yesoul bike, make sure to check out the link in my bio for a great discount. Now let's get back to the video. So there is not one single fitness program that fits all. I mean, to be fair, you can follow a fitness program and you'll probably get your horse fitter, but it won't be tailored to what you're doing, and you do run the risk of possibly injuring your horse if it's like too hard, too fast, or maybe it doesn't get them as fit as you want to get them, or whatever, because it isn't specific to what your horse is looking for and what you need. So there are lots of different factors that we do need to consider when we're looking into this, and it is very specific to your horse and your horse's history. So there's points that we've got to run through. When I'm looking at a horse and figuring out how long I reckon it's going to take me to get fit, I immediately am looking to its history as to what its previous work was and what it has done. So that is looking at whether it has been fit before, and then how long ago was it fit, so how long off has it had. So that they are 2 really important factors, because a horse that's never ever been fit in its life and has been off effectively for its whole life is going to take a lot longer to get fit than a horse who has been fit and had 6 months off, for example, or even less, a month or 2 months off. So you've kind of got to look at that, and you also need to look at what work they've previously done in relation to what work you're looking for them to do now. If you're picking up a hunter who's done several seasons of hunting but wanting it to be a dressage horse, that horse has been really fit in its lifetime, but the muscle groups it's used and the way it's worked has been very different to how you're going to ask it to work in the arena. So it's been galloping across the countryside, so it's used lots of cardiovascular fitness, but it's not necessarily used as much strength and holding training as a dressage horse. So that's why we need to take these elements into consideration. Just so you guys know, I do have a degree in equine sports science, so I am qualified to speak about this, as well as my far too many years experience of getting my own horses fit and ready to competing. So I definitely feel confident speaking about fitness, especially up to competing up to like 2-star level eventing. We start talking like 5-star level eventing, and I feel like I would need some guidance to make sure I get that extra boost of fitness, but the principles, the basic principles, are the same if you're building up a fitness program for your horse. So you need to think about when we were last worked and what your starting point is, basically. That is your first consideration. Are you pulling this horse out of the field having done no work whatsoever, or are you looking at getting your horse, who is already in some light work, a bit fitter? That does ultimately change where your starting point of the program is. And with that point as well, that is another element. How has your horse been kept? So if this horse has been off, how long's it been off for, obviously? And also, has it been out in the field, keeping its joints moving, got the opportunity to run around, etc.? Or has it been stabled? Because if your horse has been stabled, it's not been on the move, and we really do need to lengthen that program lots more to give it the opportunity for its body to acclimatise and condition to working. We're effectively talking about a couch potato at this stage. If they've been in a stable for months or whatever, then coming back to work. So we need to be considerate of that to give their bodies a chance. Otherwise, you can imagine, like, if we'd been sat sedentary for ages and then we suddenly go for a run, it really hurts, and it's not necessarily the right thing to support the body. Hi, Jessica. Oh, she's so sassy. She's getting sassier and sassier. Stop it. You are. Really? Thank you. I mean, it's lucky she doesn't claw my face, isn't it? She's just being sassy, and she wants attention, but she doesn't want to admit that she wants attention. Right. Am I going to put you down, or are we going to chat through the next bit? She says, you can chat through the next bit. Okay, so where was I? How your horse has been kept. If it's been stabled, it might have been because of facilities. It might be that you couldn't turn out over winter and you've not been able to ride because you're busy, for example. There's so many different things that can happen to get you to the point where you're at now, and it doesn't matter what those things are as long as you take them into consideration for your fitness program. So don't just ignore it and be like, oh, la 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 la, I'm just gonna do 6-week program and by the end of it it's hunting fit. Do consider where the starting point is. A lot of horses might be coming back from being stable because they've been on box rest because they're rehabbing for an injury. That is also a consideration to your fitness program, because you do need to make sure that their body is really conditioned and that you're aware of what you are rehabbing within that program, because there is already a weakness there. Now, I always like to play on the safe side when getting horses fit anyway, because their body is effectively in a weakened state regardless, because they aren't as fit, so they're not as strong. You know, like us with humans, the fitter we are, the stronger we are, a lot better we tend to feel if we've been eating well too, and it does all contribute. But especially if they've had an injury, you probably want to start giving that fitness program extra time, just to make sure that you're giving it the healing time and you're not going to stress or strain the body too fast. Right, I'm going to put the cat down. Okay, the next part of your starting point that you want to be considering, so you know effectively the history at this point, hopefully, or if you don't know the history and you're picking up the horse out of work, I would just assume that you're going to need the longest program, because then you're not going to do any damage. It doesn't do damage to go a bit slower, whereas if you go a bit too hard too fast, then you can risk injury or making your horse sour or overtired or needing to give it a rest when you're not planning on doing so. So the other element we're looking at is sort of the breed and type of your horse. So, you know, it's going to look very different if we're looking at a very blood horse or a thoroughbred, for example, compared to quite a heavy set horse. Now, most horses can do most jobs to varying abilities, but if we use Ben Hobday's Mr. Merley, for example, I think he was Potshire, wasn't he? Big, heavy-set horse. Went round a 5-star, but I bet you his fitness program looked vastly different to a pure thoroughbred's fitness program, because he just does not have the same body type and the same fast twitch muscles to be able to get fit in the same way and react in the same way for the event. So you have to tailor it to your horse's type. So if you've got something that's got more native in it, more sort of draft or heavy set breeding, then you're probably looking at a slightly longer program where you're wanting to do more interval training and the likes, than with a more blood horse that probably gets naturally a bit fitter. And my caveat here is that we can use these stereotypes and examples, but ultimately your horse will tell you, if you listen, where they're at with their fitness training, and you'll be able to judge horse by horse because everybody is different. The other thing that you're looking at is your horse's weight. If you're starting with a morbidly obese horse, you're going to need to take more time because it's going to be putting a lot of strain on the horse's body to be working with that weight. You know, we don't want to just instantly go, right, okay, off you go. Let's go trotting for miles while they're ready for that. Just start with them walking and the likes. That will burn a lot more calories for a horse that is fat than a horse that is slimmer, because it's a different amount of effort to do the same action. So you do need to consider that. For your final consideration, once you've figured out all of those starting points, you know what their previous work was that they've done. You know how long they've been off. You know how they've been kept, whether they've been in a field or whether they've been in a stable. You know whether they're coming back from an injury or not. You know what breed and type they are, so you know whether they're going to be more likely to get fitter easier or not, depending on their breed or type. You know what their weight is and whether they've got weight to lose or weight to gain, because I do personally think, having dealt with thoroughbreds myself, I do think that if you have the right feeding program and work program, you can actually help them gain weight by gently working them while you are feeding them up, because they also gain muscle and their bodies seem to optimize better. That's a side note anyway. But you know all of these starting points, and then you want to know where your end point is, okay? So you've got your starting points and your end point. So what do you want to do with your horse? Do you want to show jump them? Do you want to dressage them? Do you want to do endurance with them? That makes a big difference on which muscle groups they're using, how cardiovascularly fit they need to be, what they are using for their energy. So there's 2 different energy sources or respirations. God, I should have done some research. Anyway, there's anaerobic and aerobic respiration. It is respiration. So basically it's how the body gets energy out while they're doing the work. Anaerobic basically means without oxygen. So this is your fast, powerful movements. If we're talking humans, this is your sprinters. They are burning energy without oxygen because they need it super fast. So they do breathe, just by the way. But to try and simplify this down to the most basic standard, anaerobic is your explosive, quick power. That doesn't last very long. So if we're talking anaerobic, you'd probably be like your sprint racers, or if you've got a big short stint. So that is a very, very different fitness to an endurance horse or an event horse, for example, who is doing a 10-minute cross-country course. They cannot work anaerobically. They're not in the ring for less than a minute. They are going for 10, 12, whatever minutes. They've got to work aerobically. That is your slow and consistent release of energy, okay? So it makes 2 completely different fitness programs that you need to have. So, if you're working your show jumpers, you will want to cross-train them and have it so that they've got a good bit of cardiovascular fitness, that they've got a bit of stamina. But ultimately, you want the short, big bursts of power. So you want the sort of tighter muscles, and that's why you see horses looking different. So when you line them up, your dressage horse doesn't look like an event horse, and the event horse definitely doesn't look like a show jumper. They look very different. Your event horse is your more lanky version of all of them. Your dressage horse is probably the most chunky because they've got muscles for holding themselves in these immensely strong positions, and your show jumpers are your in between sort of dressage and eventers, I suppose, where they've got to be able to canter on and get a bit of a gallop on occasionally, but they also need that short power as well. So I hope that made sense. You're not going to have one program that fits all, because actually you need to be working different muscle groups, different management of respiration systems, and different stamina amounts. Depending on each horse, you're going to have a different start point and a different end point where you want to get the goal. So the in-between bit is your program that you need to consider. So I could very easily turn around and tell you you can do 2 weeks walking and a week of trotting and do this length of time and whatever. But to be quite honest, I like to work a bit more intuitively than that. So what I will say is the better you get the basic foundations, the better the building will be, if that makes sense. So you can build on it better if you have good base fitness for your horse. So don't be afraid to spend time walking them out and trotting in straight lines just to get that base aerobic fitness, cardiovascular fitness, where they're just on the move and getting their bodies moving. If your horse has had a longer period off, I would spend longer doing that, okay? So if they've not been in work very long, spend longer doing that. You do have to tailor it though, because if you think of the backing process for a youngster, when I got Teddy, he wasn't the easiest. You could lead him, he was a good boy, but he wasn't the most reliable to lead because he hadn't done loads of leading and the likes. So he had to be trained first. So we just did that instead by tailoring it and giving him short stints of work rather than going straight in with like an hour's work at a time. So you tailor it and you find a way to make it work for the horse. But if you've got a horse that's already in work, already back, go and take them out for a walk on a hack if you can. Some horses, you'll be bringing them back into work and you think, blooming heck, I'd be taking my life in my hands if I did that. Like, that's where I'm just a bit like, if you need to lunge it, lunge it. If you need to go and ride in the arena for a little bit, do that, but just be aware that your horse isn't very fit, so it's going to start blowing quite quickly. So if you've got the edge of it at that point, go and take it for a walk then, or call it a day at that point and then take it for a walk the next day. So be realistic about what you're doing to get your horse back going and then get your program going. So yeah, if you've had a horse that's been off for a long time, had an injury, is getting fit for the first time, try and take more time getting it walked out, getting the basics done. Personally, because I work quite intuitively with the horses, I then just build up their program as they go, as I feel they feel stronger. So I'll start with 10 minutes walking and then I'll build it up. And it might be that I go in 10-minute jumps. So it might be one day 10 minutes, the next day 20 minutes, the next day 30 minutes. Or it might be that I feel like actually they're really struggling with a 20-minute walk or trot. Well, you wouldn't trot for the whole 20 minutes, but you know what I mean. And actually I keep doing that for the next week. So I just tailor it to the horse as to what they feel like they're feeling strong, and when it starts feeling easier, that's when we add on a little bit more. So we just build it up progressively like that. I think the most important part about your fitness program is consistency. There's no point going in and going hard for 7 days and then not working them again for 3 weeks. Like, there's just no point. So you've got to be realistic about what your horse can manage, you know, what their fitness levels can manage, because they do need rest days. That is another really important element of their fitness program, so they can rest and recover and let their muscles grow. But you also need to be realistic about what your time limitations can do. If you can only ride twice a week, then fine. Make your program for twice a week. Just know it's going to take longer. If you can ride your horse 5 times a week, then great as well. But also make sure that you've got easier days within those and that you spread it out with days off too. And then make sure whatever you commit to, you can commit to consistently. I will also say that we want quality over quantity with your horse's fitness. So there's no point doing, well, there is if you want to. You can do a buckle end hack for an hour, or you can probably do a good active 20-minute or half an hour hack where you're leg yielding your horse and it's walking into a contact and it's marching on rather than looks like it's going for a walk down a beach. And it probably works just as hard. Equally, a 20-minute schooling session that's quite intense will take a lot more energy and build up your horse's fitness a lot more than an hour and a half amble around the countryside. Now, both is fine. Both activities are fine. Both are adding to the fitness. Just be mindful of which one is really pushing your fitness on. And if you're struggling for time, think, right, okay, I can do a strong lunging session. Lunging's really hard for them. They're on a circle, especially if you've got a training aid and you're asking them to work really round and with their bellies up. That's hard work. That's like going and doing plank for ages. You wouldn't go and do plank for half an hour, but you might go for a half an hour jog. Yeah? So you've got to think about the intensity of the workout. And if you're struggling for time, maybe make the workout a bit more intense. Always have a good warm up, always have a good cool down. Think about then which muscle groups you are exercising. A workout on the lunge where you're asking them to work really round, and you might ask them to work more collected or over poles, for example, is going to be very different muscle groups to asking them to do gallop work. So you want to be figuring out, with the end goal in mind, what your split needs to be. If you are, easiest example for me, eventing. If you're eventing, you need to do a good split of everything, because we've got to do all the phases. We've got to dressage, we've got to show jump, we've got to cross country. So it is probably the hardest one to get your horse fit for, but equally I quite like it because it's good variety. So I would personally, if I give you an example, my fitness program for my horses tends to look like, I initially start them walking. It depends on how long they've been off and how quickly they feel like they're getting strong again. Usually they don't tend to have more than a month off if I can help it. So they're usually coming back from quite a strong point. So they have like a week to 10 days walking, and then we'll start adding in some trotting. Sometimes I have to add in trotting before that because they start getting a little bit lit up. So it just depends on where they're at, but I'll aim for like 10 days walking, and then I'll add in the trotting, and very quickly I'll add in the schooling, probably all within the first 3 weeks of getting them back into work, because they've not been off for very long and they've all been fit before now at this stage. Then once I'm into their main work program, I tend to try and gallop at least once a week. I lunge at least once a week. They go for a nice easy hack. So that's 3 different muscle groups we're working. We're doing quite a strength training on the lunge. We're going for a gallop, which is that fast work, getting in there. And then we're going for a nice easy hack once a week as well, which is just a nice stretching exercise for them. I'm then doing my skills training. So I want to jump them once a week. That's up to 4 times working per week. Then I also want to dressage school them once a week, and I do try to work them 6 times a week personally. So then I'll usually do a poles session, which is another strength training session for them. My hacks that tend to be quite relaxed, I add in hills. So again, if we're going to add in intensity with these sort of things, a walk up a hill is a lot harder than a walk across flat ground. So I'm very blessed with where I'm based that we have brilliant hills. It was one of my main draws for coming here. So I will incorporate those hills for really building up their glutes, and it builds up their cardiovascular fitness really as well. Walking up some of the hills around here really gets them blowing. I'm also really blessed that we've got gallops, but equally, at one time I didn't even used to have an arena. So there is definitely ways to work around all of these things. If you don't have hills, do pole work if you can. You might have water that you can ride through. That does the same thing of adding intensity without having to work them fast and hard. And then, as I mentioned with my routine, I'm doing skills training. So you've then got to practice your skills. You know, you need to do your grid work when you give them a jump so that they pick up their speed and their agility. You need to practice your dressage moves and the likes to make sure you're building up those muscles, but also to make sure you're actually training what you want to do. And that all naturally encompasses your fitness program. Now, I know I try to work my horses 6 times a week, but there will be days where they have a lot more rest days. So Teddy, he doesn't get worked 6 times a week because he's still building up his initial base fitness, because he's never been fit in his life, but he has at least lived his whole life out in the field. So he'll often work on a day on, day off basis. Maggie and Duna, who are on the event season sort of run, they get worked a lot harder, and Teddy will build up to that stage, but because he's at a different point, that's where it gets tailored again. My favourite thing to do over there is my weekly planner. I tend to just write it down, what they're doing, and then I try and make sure that I've incorporated a pole session, a jump session, a lunge session, a hack session, and a gallop session. And if and a dressage session. I knew I was missing something off. And if I have to like sacrifice something, sometimes the gallop session and the hack session get merged into one, or the pole session and the jump session get merged into one, and then it gives me a little bit of leeway, but it gives me a target to work towards so that I can go, right, have we done everything this week? Or if we have a particular focus that we want to do on dressage, we might turn around and go, right, instead of doing a pole session, I'm going to do a second dressage session this week. I hope that helps. What I think you ultimately have to do is know where you're starting from, use the factors that I've given you in this video to generate a picture of your starting point so that you know what intensity your horse can begin with. Know that a 10-minute hack is a lot less intense than schooling for 20 minutes, and then progressively build up from there. You then need to know your end point, which then has your goal in mind, and you know what you're working towards and what bits you have to do, and know that schooling is part of your fitness. I think sometimes it's very easy to think, oh no, I've got to go hacking to get my horse fit. 20-minute schooling sessions, hard work. That is part of the fitness program, okay? So whatever you do when you're riding your horse, that is part and parcel of the fitness program. So I personally like to track it and write it down, and it gives me a good idea of what they've managed to do. You know, have you managed to get to the end of that 30-minute schooling session, or did your horse have to have extra breaks? Maybe not quite fit enough for it. That's somewhere to work up to, and then just keep track of it. In a month's time, you might notice half an hour schooling session really easy, and then just increase the intensity, add in more lateral work, add in more pole work, etc., and build it up progressively. I can't tell you what's going to be exactly the right thing for you to do on week 3 of your program. Only you are going to know that because there's so many different variables. But just know that all you need to do is make it a little bit harder each time, build in your rest days, and that fitness will increase. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this helpful. I can definitely do more videos where we get into the more nitty-gritty, but I'm hoping this is a good overview for you that you can work from and build up from. I will make sure to see you very soon. Please make sure to press like and subscribe because it really does help me out, and have a great day.